welcome to Heavyweight, where we talk about the important things. And today, it's the day before July 4th, which means it's July 3rd. I don't know when you'll be getting this, but it doesn't matter.
Today.
It's appropriate for people to watch it at any time, right? So today we're going to talk about...
Our weigh-in?
What? Oh, yeah, weigh-in, yeah. Losing weight?
Or not. So the scale's so stupid. I feel like I've been doing pretty good on my diet, not cheating too much.
And then we're going to talk about religious freedom, and we're going to talk about the pilgrims and stuff like that. And loving your neighbor as yourself. So I hope you join us as we talk about this all-important topic in America, because freedom of religion and the fact that religious freedom has, that's the founding of our country. It's an important topic. So join us today. All right, let's talk about our weigh-in.
As I was saying before you cut me off, I feel like I've been doing good on my diet, working really hard, but the scale didn't necessarily say it today, but it said I didn't lose any weight. It's a liar.
The scale told me today that I've lost another pound.
About time.
Down to 2,005 pounds.
2,005
Yeah,
pounds.
205. So I'm sinking. And I didn't tell you. Ta-da! New record on the elliptical. I dropped it down to level 1. And guess how fast I did that mile?
He level 1, which makes it easier.
Way easier.
Yeah. Huh?
I did it in 7 minutes and 52 seconds.
Yeah.
For 1 mile. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Now you got to do that every time.
Yeah,
every single time.
Yeah,
on level 4.
That's not happening. So we're losing weight. You can join us in our weight loss journey. You can tell how yours is going. We'd love it if you communicate with us. And
we're working on it.
yeah.
You could definitely see it. I could tell you, you can see it in you, and I feel it. I don't know if I see it as much, but I do feel it, and I'm starting to fit in some clothes that...
You're a lean, mean, fighting machine.
Okay. Anyway, so that's what's going on with the weight loss. We're working on it.
Yeah.
So...
And then talk about loving our neighbor. Daily Bread today talked about love your neighbor. And, boy... That's an interesting subject, because it's getting tougher and tougher to love people today.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I'm moving away right now.
My neighbor's a pain, but I'm sure this neighbor's a pain sometimes too. But it is important, and of course I think Jesus was pretty emphatic about love. Jesus was kind of a hippie. But love thy neighbor is huge with Jesus, and with the Christian faith, we believe that love and loving your neighbor, loving your enemy is so important.
Yeah. So, and a little story for you. When I moved into my new place, which was 6 years ago, my dog was getting used to the place, and it barked a little too much. And it was like the first couple of days, the neighbor came over. He had just had a little bit too much to drink. And he came over cussing and swearing at us and our dog, telling us that we better keep our dog quiet. And I was kind of in shock. First encounters,
Yeah, good impression.
First encounter was, began to
Shut
swear
your dog up.
But I decided to hold my tongue and decided that we should shut my dog up. And over time... we've become good friends. And I didn't choose to make that an issue at the time. He was kind of right. My dog was a little gappy. We did need to keep him quiet.
Yep.
And certainly it was not the way that we should do things, to come over yelling at me. But all the same, we've been able to minister to him and become friends with him, and he's been good to us. So, loving your neighbor was a good thing.
Yeah, it's definitely important, because, you only have to live next to the person. So if, at a more extreme case, the Hatfields and McCoys, they did not love thy neighbor, and look what happened there. I mean, they killed each other practically. You chose to have a different reaction, a loving reaction, and a patient one with them, and that allowed that relation to form into something that it could have been not good. You guys live next to each other. I mean, there's been neighbors that call cops on each other all day.
Each other.
Or that. Yeah. I don't see that.
Well,
but
you were talking about early America, and we have the Jamestown experiment, which didn't go so well, and some of the other experiments where they brought criminals over to early America, and they didn't get along with the Indians, and some of their early settlements were wiped out. But then you had the Pilgrims, and that was a little bit different story. They showed some love your neighbor stuff.
Exactly. And that actually perfect goes along with our theme, your story. And like you said, the Pilgrims came over, and of course, the biggest reason they came over was for religious freedoms. But
there it is.
They arrived, and they met some neighbors. Instead of, greeting your neighbor with a gun and you formed a bad relationship. The Pilgrims they had a day of Thanksgiving, and they invited the natives to come over and eat with them, and of course that started a relationship where they both taught each other things on how to grow corn, and that helped them to survive the winters and so on.
Yeah, I mean it was a good relationship. That has not always been true in America. In fact,
Right.
we have had a really mixed bag of relationship with the Indians, the natives here in America, and has caused no end of problems over the years.
Yeah.
So, we should love our neighbors no matter whether they're red, yellow, black, or white.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the issues with the American Indians were caused because, of course, for selfish reasons and for not
People
loving
wanted
reasons.
their land.
They
People
wanted
their gold.
and of course,
know?
of course, every tribe's a little, they have their own, culture and so on now. But I imagine a lot of the natives, they just didn't want anybody on their land, or they just saw white people and they hated, or vice versa.
So yeah, I mean, right. And then we're really talking about religious freedom today. And America was founded on religious freedom. The Pilgrims came over
Absolutely.
for religious freedom. And that was their main thing. They escaped from England. They
Right.
escaped from Europe because they were persecuted there, and they left purposely to find religious freedom. And that kind of set the tone for America.
Yeah.
And our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence draw heavily from the Bible and heavily
Absolutely.
from moral and religious influence. And while we wouldn't say they were trying to create necessarily a Christian country, they were trying to create a country that was based upon Christian principles, because they believed that those principles created the best form of government possible. And you know what?
They were right.
They were right. It did.
For a very, very long, and I hesitate to say it, even now we still probably have the most free country as far as religious goes.
Well, let's talk about our founding documents.
Yeah. I mean, well, the question is the question, I had going in is was America founded on Christian values, and is it, so we find all kinds of evidence. Of course, we just talked about one was the Pilgrims. They came over for religious reasons, freedoms. But, of course, the war that we fought for our freedom was fought. And of course, the Declaration of Independence was, the whole thing is littered with a Christian worldview.
No, that can't be true.
I know a lot of people don't believe that.
Where do you find
and
that
it's a
in
very
there?
racist document, right? Well, though there's nothing in there that's racist whatsoever.
Yeah. So let's read from that. Let's read some of the good stuff that come right from the Declaration.
So I mean, I'll skip it, but their very first, the very first sentence mentions God, and of course, everybody knows the most famous line from the Declaration of Independence: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I mean, whew, give me shivers just thinking about it, just reading that.
Let's face it, we talked about slavery last time.
Yeah.
The Declaration of Independence is really just those words they're the death rattle for slavery, because they said all men are created equal.
Right.
We have equal rights.
Right. And it's like I said, everything that's in there is basically based off from the Bible. Basically, that's where they form the Declaration of Independence. So that's nowhere else.
Yeah, and so the Declaration of Independence has more references to God. The Constitution, not so much. But it was still based on the Republican representative form of government found in the Bible, espoused by Moses and things like that. But listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
So here are some of the founders of the United States, writers of the Constitution. Second President of the United States, John Adams. This is what he said. It is religion and morality alone which can establish the principles upon which freedom can securely stand. The only foundation of a free constitution is pure virtue. You can't get clearer than that, can you? He said,
I don't think so.
Most of the founders, most of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, most of those in the Constitutional Convention were Christians of different stripes, different viewpoints, but believers in God.
Absolutely.
And they chose specific biblical principles, and they didn't choose all biblical principles. They chose some from reason and so on to create our Constitution. So here's another thing that John Adams said. We have no government armed with power, capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Our Constitution was only made for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Now, what was he saying here? He was saying that there's no way if people want to be corrupt, if they want to be criminals, if they want to live a life of immorality, there's no way that our government's going to work.
Right.
And I can tell you right now, that's one of the biggest concerns of Christians, and it has been for a long time in America, is that, the left and those who don't agree with Christian morals, they have the right to their viewpoint, but what they don't understand is they are taking away future freedom. This country cannot stand unless people are restrained by God. So here's how this works out. So we have a representative form of government where the people, elect their representatives, and their representatives run the government. As long as those people are restrained by some values and some morals and some religious beliefs that they're accountable to God and accountable to the people, then we can have this kind of freedom. But as soon as those people degrade into corruption, cronyism, theft, as soon as they have no accountability to anyone but their own pocketbook and their own greed, then what happens is
what's happening now?
Yeah, what's happening now?
I mean, you have corrupt DAs who refuse to charge. You have corrupt even police. And we obviously, our government is corrupt to the bone, and they victimize the criminals, and then the good guys end up going to jail. That's how it feels a lot of the times. The degrading of America is because the degrading of God. I think there's a direct link there.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's take our situation here in America, where let's talk about the little guy. How do we've got speed limits, we've got building laws and requirements, we've got work requirements. How do you keep all these people honest? Well, there's only two ways. The one way is through self-responsibility and responsibility to God.
Yeah.
And that's what the Constitution pushes for.
Yeah.
The other way is through a top-down government where a police or regulatory agencies constantly must monitor you because you're corrupt. And so what happens when the entire country becomes corrupt? Well, first of all, the monitors are corrupt, and so that's a problem. But how in the world do you rein in 1 million, 2 million, 3 million corrupt individuals? You don't have enough police state.
Well,
you
that's
don't
a
have
good
enough
question.
regulations. You don't have enough prisons to stop all that.
I don't know. I think that there's no history that shows us that that can happen. Could it happen? I think it could. I think that America could turn things around. But all we have is examples of once a country or a nation goes into decline, into corruption. Take Rome for example. Just how amazing that was, the most advanced nation ever. They were so far ahead of their time, so far, and of course as the years went by, they became more and more corrupt. And the degrading of their society, and I think that's what's happening in America. I think there's a direct correlation of when we stopped believing in God. When we stopped going to churches, and I just see, even in my lifetime when I was young, there's been a big degrading in that.
Yeah, so another one, Benjamin Franklin, a guy you wouldn't expect, because he's the one guy who claimed he wasn't a Christian. He said he was kind of a deist kind of guy.
He a little cray. I mean,
but this is what
he's
he
different.
said. He said, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. Benjamin said this. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. So what he's saying is we need dictators. We need people with big guns to stop the little guys who are breaking into buildings and burning down cities.
He would have been fine with big government, obviously.
No, he doesn't. He said we need.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I heard you wrong.
No, he said.
Okay, so he wasn't completely crazy. Gotcha.
No, Benjamin Franklin.
No, it's very, very
he
intelligent.
He had values,
Yes,
even though he didn't necessarily. He wasn't a Christian.
And I was being facetious as far as being crazy. He's obviously very intelligent and one of the most brilliant minds. But
yeah, so here in the United States, we live in what I call and you talk to anybody and it makes sense. We live in a highly regulated society. There are regulations for everything. Everything. There's regulations for what we do here on YouTube. There's regulations for work. There's regulations for whether you can build, what you can build, how you can build it, when you can build it. There's regulations for whether you can be an independent contractor, whether you can be a babysitter.
Yeah.
There's you name it, there are regulations for it. It used to be that it wasn't this way. You didn't have those regulations.
Right.
You were free to make those choices yourself.
Sure.
Now, the Bible says that the law, the intent of the law was not created for the righteous man, but for the lawbreaker. And that's really what the law is supposed to be made for. It's supposed to be made to stop breaking the law. But here in America, we live in a highly regulated society where the law is made for the honest man. It's made...
Right.
Well, and I understand why we have to have some of these laws. For example, the speed limit.
Yeah. I don't understand that one, but
no, I don't either. I mean, there are traffic laws which make sense.
Sure.
And we wouldn't need traffic laws if everyone drove wisely.
Absolutely.
But no, not everybody does so. Because people are out of control, we have to have traffic laws and we have to stop people. We have building codes because, well, I mean, let's face it. Most buildings that people do on a small scale probably would be somewhat okay. Without the building codes. But let's face it, once you get to 3-story, 4-story, 5-story skyscrapers, you need regulation.
Needs to be built correctly.
You need engineering.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I understand the reason for regulations.
Yeah, sure.
But we live in an over-regulated society. We become so zealous and why we become so zealous? Because we have forgotten the founding principles because we've forgotten God.
Exactly. And we used to be God-centered, God-fearing. We based everything because of God and our beliefs on God and our laws and so on. And we could track all of that. But now it seems like we are not we, but our government is trying to fill that God role, where God sets the rules, where now I set the rules, and I'm trying to play God, so I want to be in control of every little thing that you do, so that I can have power over you. And I just think that is, I think that's just that's Satan. What is Satan? What did he want? He wanted to be God, and he wanted to be in control of everything. And I think that's what we're degrading down to be.
Yeah, I mean everything you do, whether you have body odor, deodorant, you got to regulate everything. What you wear. I mean, pretty soon everything's so regulated, and our society talks about diversity and inclusion. Well, this viewpoint, the liberal leftist viewpoint, that we need to regulate everything, actually is the very thing that's going to bring in a cookie cutter existence where you can't step out of line, or you get hung or shot or thrown in jail or something like that.
Right.
Well, yeah. Hey, let's transition just a little bit.
Oh.
Let's transition to more religious freedom. Let's talk about some of the Supreme Court's decisions, recent decisions. In the last week, there have been
good things happening.
A couple of good decisions. We'll talk about two of them at least.